Hello, and welcome to the Dark Echo YouTube channel at the Beautiful Nightmares Show. I'm your guide, Michael, and all you need to do is sit back, fasten your seatbelt, and get ready for a journey to another world. Without further ado or introduction, let's begin. This story is short but terrifying. It happened to me when I was a teenager, around 14, 15 years old. I had a very good friend at the time whom I considered a brother. We went everywhere together and did a lot of stupid things together. One night, around 11 o'clock, we arrived in front of the building where he lived. It was a modest building with 4 floors and he lived on the first floor. As soon as we entered the building, the first thing you could see were the stairs that led to the first floor. Next to the stairs was a friendly old man with a slightly mischievous smile. My friend quickly ran up the stairs, entered his apartment, and closed the door behind him. He didn't even greet the old man who was just there smoking. And that was a bit strange because my friend was a very polite person. I apologized in his place. The old man looked at me, smiling, and told me that it was no problem and wished me a good night. I went upstairs, arrived in front of the door where my friend lived. I knocked on the door. He opened it and I went into the apartment asking what had happened. Looking up at him, I saw how scared he was. He was he was white as a sheet and trembling uncontrollably. I asked him if he was okay and he replied to me that the old man who was smoking on the stairs was old John who had a heart attack and died exactly on those stairs 7 years ago. In that moment, my blood ran cold, and that was the last time I spent the night at my friend's house. The little girl on the road. On December 20, 2006, the following story happened. It was 8:30 p.m. and I was driving slowly as there was a lot of snow on the road. I was on my way to my parents' house for the holidays. You see, I live in one city and they live in another, about a 3 hours drive away. Well, about halfway through the journey, I turned onto a forest road. All I could see were trees on both sides. The forest road stretched for about 30 miles. After a fairly dangerous turn, my headlights illuminated a little girl on a tricycle who was about 8 years old. Thanks to my excellent reflexes, I was able to stop the car safely without hitting the girl. She was a little pale, dressed in a vintage dress and riding a tricycle that, although it looked new, I knew it was an extremely old model. The little girl looked directly into my eyes with a sad and worried expression, almost crying, and turned her head towards the seemingly infinite forest. She began to pedal slowly, a little forced, and made her way down the long road into the woods. Seeing this, I quickly got out of the car, thinking she needs help. But when I got out, the little girl had disappeared. I surged and I shouted as much as I could, knowing and feeling that something was not right. The girl couldn't have disappeared without a trace. I ventured into the forest, but it was dark and I realized I had no chance of finding her. So I ran back to the road to get to my car and call the police. Remember that everything happened around 8 9 p.m. and I was not in the woods for more than 10 20 minutes at most. When I got back to the road, it was day and there was a police officer in my car trying to find the documents. I went over to him quickly and asked him what he was doing in my car. The police officer looked at me and politely asked me to identify myself. I did so, and he spoke into his radio saying that he found me. I asked what was going on, and he told me that I've been missing for 3 months, and my parents called the police department on December 21st because I disappeared without a trace. Angry and a little bit amused, I told him to stop the bad jokes. He told me that this is not a joke, and he explained to me how teams of people had searched for me everywhere, including in the forest where I had spent a maximum of 20 minutes, and how my car appeared on the road in front of him out of nowhere, as if it had been teleported there. He asked me what had happened, and I began to tell him about the little girl I had seen. About halfway through my story, he interrupted me saying that I'm not the first person to see that girl and they have a lot of people calling the police saying the exact same thing. But apparently I was the first person who actually went into the forest after her. He also told me that 40 years ago a little girl was hit by a car in the exact same spot. It has been 10 years since this happened, and today was my last day of therapy. I feel different, but I still don't know if the therapy helped or it just emphasized the story. Now, you, the one who look at me from the mirror every night, you who are tormented by demons, you who are in that forest, I'm sorry, and I thank you for protecting my mind by taking all the evil, all the pain and torture that I went through during the 3 months I was trapped in that hell. You, that version of myself who saw the abyss, thank you. And I hope that someday you will be able to forget what happened to, as I did. The house on the hill. I remember this story with great details, as it was the one that changed my entire perception of the supernatural. It all began in the summer of 2001. I was a child, 7 years old, a little dim-witted and very easily scared. I heard all sorts of stories from the people around me about the house on the hill, as they called it. In short, the house was old, very old. There were many stories, such as the house being haunted by a spirit brought in this world by a satanic ritual, or that the house was haunted by a very evil man who lived there and killed his children and his wife in that house. Another very popular story says that the house is actually a portal to hell and that it was built by three very powerful witches trying to keep the gates of hell under control, not allowing evil and malevolent spirits to come out. Another story says that an extremely evil witch lived in that house who would kidnap children, sacrifice them, and then eat them. There were many stories about that house, and as a scared child, I believed them all. But over time, I began to forget the stories about the house on the hill, and even if I heard stories about that house, I no longer believed them. 10 years later, me and three more friends, two of the same age, 17 years old, and one a bit older, 19 years old, we're talking about that house, trying to scare each other with stories about the house that we had invented. One of the friends said that he saw a demon face in the window that shouted his name. Another one said that when he passed in front of the house, The earth started shaking, and the sound of horses' hooves could be heard from all around him. Another one said that he tried to enter the yard, but an invisible force pushed him back. I tried to sound brave, and I laughed and I said that I went into the house and nothing happened. No spirits, no demon, no witches, absolutely nothing. We continued to talk about other things like music, movies, technology, etc. By 1:30 in the morning, we ran out of topics to discuss, and one of us said that he has a super cool idea. What's the idea? We asked. And he explained to us how all of us have phone with cameras and it will be very cool to go to the house on the hill, make some videos, and prove once for all there's nothing to be scared of. It's just an old house and that's it. No ghosts, no witches, no stories, and everything is just folklore. We were stupid teenagers who thought the world was our playground, so we said, yeah, let's do it. We got up from the bench we were sitting on and slowly started walking towards the house on the hill. It was about a 20 minutes journey from our block to the house on the hill, during which we encouraged each other and make jokes saying that if we saw any ghosts or spirits, we would make fun of them and they would leave cry. Finally, we arrived in front of the house, which, although was not very big, stood on that hill like a sign that read, Danger, Doorbell. We took a deep breath, a little scared of the dark landscape and the wind that blew as if it whispering, Go home. We reached the porch of the house, and then one of us said, Hey, let's knock on the door. And we knocked loudly on the door, shouting and laughing. We started making jokes until we heard three strong and prominent knocks from the other side of the door. Our blood froze and a deadly silence fell over the entire landscape. We couldn't speak, and when we realized what had happened, we tried to find a logical explanation. One of us, the oldest among us, said that something must have fallen on the door as the house was old. He tried to open the door, but the door was closed. We decided to go back home, and as we all turned to leave, the door slowly opened, and a force we could not see whispered, Come inside. Terrified, we tried to run, but our legs were paralyzed, and we felt how this unseen force was pulling us towards the house. I closed my eyes for a second, and when I opened them, we were inside of the house, in what I recognized as the living room. We didn't know how we got there, and when we tried to run to the door, it was closed. All we could feel was cold, horror, and fear. We tried to calm down, but a minute later one of us began to scream in pain, and we all saw him rise from the ground and float in the air crying tears of pain. Another one fell to the ground crying out not to be strangled anymore. A third one began speaking an unknown language and his eyes transformed from brown to completely white. I felt indescribable pain in my chest, as if someone was pushing a hot knife through my chest. Shortly after, I fainted. We all woke up the next morning in the same room with various signs all over our bodies, scratches, cuts, bruises, etc. We all remembered what had happened, but we didn't know how to react until the front door opened wide and we all heard a voice saying,
Get out now.
We all ran away without looking back. We told everyone what happened, but they told us we had a very rich imagination. 2 years after this incident, one of us committed suicide. The strangest thing was that he was very happy and fulfilled before suicide, and the way he committed suicide was very strange. The doctors said he had swallowed a lot of sleeping pills, which was suspicious because he was not on any medication. In his farewell note, there were only three words.
One is mine.
2 years after this incident, another one of us committed suicide by hanging himself and leaving a note with three words.
Two are mine.
After another 2 years, the oldest of us committed suicide by jumping off a building. They found a note in his pocket that read,
Three are mine.
Today marks exactly 2 years since the last suicide. I'm in my room and have just forced myself to deeply cut my veins, forced by the spirit that has taken control of my body. Now I understand why the others committed suicide. It wasn't their fault, just as it's not my fault. I have only one regret, and that is that I was in that cursed house. All I can see right now is how the evil spirit is manipulating my hand to write the note. Four are mine. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed what you heard and would like to hear more, don't forget to click the subscribe button and the bell icon next to it so that you can be notified every time I post. Don't forget to like and share if you want to support the channel. And you can also visit the Dark Echo Instagram, Facebook and TikTok pages. The links are in the description. I wish you a peaceful night, and I hope to see you again.